After hitting the roadblock with the Tamiya P-38 review, followed by some serious space making, it seemed logical to revisit some basic questions. Typical questions asked of modelers, as well as between modelers, are: why did you decide to build a model of that? How did you get started building those? What got you interested in that? For some reason, you decided on that particular subject, that scale, that display. I think for most of us, we start a model project with some idea of what we want the finished model to look like. Whenever I start a model project, I have a pretty complete vision of how I want the model to be finished and displayed. I first started building plastic models in the 50s, and a major influence of that vision was the box art of the model itself. The aisle of the local model shop was a virtual art gallery of inspiration. Every box had a story, something exciting. A big part of the fun was getting caught up in that image, and the expectation of what the finished model would look like. Descriptions on the box like authentic, realistic, scaled from official blueprints, helped validate that what was in the kit was an accurate representation, and it has an influence on your thinking about what the hobby's all about. After all, I could build an official, authentic model of the real thing. I best not take this responsibility lightly. Of course, they weren't always that accurate, and it rarely turned out looking like the box. But somehow I could fill in the missing pieces, and I felt like I did my bit and had some fun along the way. If I was lucky, I could find some images in a book at the library, something better than the encyclopedia at home. In those days, reference material was strictly in printed form and not easily accessible. Model magazines of those days were mostly focused on more traditional model making, flying models or scratch building for model railroading and model ships. Whether it was a model box or a book, for whatever reason, there are certain images that I'll always remember, certain images that have had more impact. When it came to the P-38 project, there isn't any doubt that the emotional appeal is seeing them in flight. That really goes for any airplane. So what makes me stop and look up towards the sound of the engines in the sky? It's the emotions that make memories of an airshow experience, memories that I'll always carry with me. When I'm working on that project, that's the image that I want in my mind the entire time. My first P-38 was the Airfix P-38J. I painted the model to match the artwork in the famous fighter's book that I had borrowed from the library. Over 50 years later, it's still an influence. In this case, I fell victim to the box art again. I have to say that the box art of the Tamiya P-38J kit is some of the best ever. As I was working through the kit, I felt like there was some sort of a disconnect between my vision and what I really wanted, and maybe it wasn't so much the box art. Having to deal with fit issues, preserving exactly matched panel lines with some ill-fitting internal details, not to mention all my own garbage, dealing with everything having to look perfect under high-powered loops, and then finally finishing a review. I decided to take a pause again and clean up my space. I used the space to step away and think about what was the issue. I realized that some of my visions really hadn't changed, but it was more related to what elements of that subject had initially attracted me to the model and what I wanted from the building experience. How was that at odds with my vision and what seemed to be demanding my attention while actually building the model? It wasn't until I was working on the images of the model that it finally became very clear, and I was able to articulate what was going on, finally allowing me a chance to put the pieces of the hobby together, the pieces that somehow fell off the sprue and got mixed up at the bottom of the box.